Thank you, Chairman Murray and Ranking Member Sessions, for convening us today. In my view, our country faces twin challenges, stabilizing our debt and deficit without shortchanging our future, and continuing to move our economic recovery forward. And I think that's something that all of us here can agree on, but there's real disagreement on how we tackle these twin challenges. In my view, I don't believe this can be an either-or proposition. We can't have all stimulus or all austerity. We need to have a balanced approach. However, right now we're seeing the effects of sequestration, and I think that's anything but balanced. This year alone, the Congressional Budget Office estimates that sequestration will cost our economy about 750,000 jobs. And we fear that the consequences of sequestration will continue to compound over time. We are cutting away at things like education and scientific research and innovation, which have previously provided a strong foundation for our economic growth and global competitiveness. Indeed, over the past half-century, more than half the growth in our nation's GDP has been rooted in scientific discoveries. This is the kind of fundamental mission-driven research that is done at places like the Great Lakes Bioenergy Research Center, which I had the chance to visit last Friday. This center is a Department of Energy-funded consortium of over 400 researchers and innovators researching advanced biofuel technologies that will help to support an economy that's built to last. In addition, I had the chance to sit down with and talk to researchers from across the University of Wisconsin-Madison campus who rely on federal investments, especially research grants from the National Institutes of Health and the National Science Foundation. This entire group talked about their worries that there'll be an entire missing generation of scientists. They explained that diminishing grant opportunities and intense competition are putting the brakes on innovation at a time when we need to be stepping on the accelerator. The potential for future employment and economic growth opportunities in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics-related fields is huge. In my travels around the state of Wisconsin, the question is, will we be able to educate enough young Americans to fill these positions? And indeed, there's a consensus between business and educators on the need to increase STEM programs in our K-12 education to meet this demand. At the same time, the federal government is pressing the pause button on research and innovation at the highest levels. Dr. Summers, in your testimony, you talk about the difficulty that recent college graduates have in getting onto career ladders. The researchers I met with at the University of Wisconsin-Madison shared a very similar perspective. From a competitive standpoint, can you speak a little bit about what happens when we begin narrowing the pipeline of young scientists and engineers who are working on basic and applied research?
It's like prospecting. Some of the holes come up dry, but when you hit a good one, it's enormously valuable. If we do less scientific research, we're doing less prospecting, it's less likely that the next semiconductor will be invented here. It's less likely that we'll be the center of the action in biomedical research. There was a time when Oxford and Cambridge in England were the centers of global scientific research. Over time, as England struggled, there was less support, and while great universities, they lost some of what was special in terms of their capacity to support scientific research. That benefited the United States very importantly during the 20th century. And the question that history will judge us on, I believe, is whether we allow a transition like that to happen with respect to U.S. scientific leadership or whether we don't. The 20th century was in many ways a century of physics, with the Manhattan Project, with the semiconductor, the personal computer, ultimately the internet. And our leadership in it was central to our leadership in the world. I believe the 21st century is going to be a century of the life sciences, with revolutionary understandings that contribute to cure, with tremendous things happening in bioengineering. And it's going to be very important for the position of the United States in the world to what extent we are leaders of that. We are set up to be leaders because of the institutions that we have, but others know how important that is as well, and the decisions we make about supporting scientific research will guide the choices of our most talented young people, and that will have a profound effect on the future of the country.
If the chair will indulge a brief response, your painting the picture of the last century is very meaningful to me. I was raised by my grandparents, and my grandfather was U.S. born but got his PhD in biochemistry at Cambridge University, and at the onset of World War II, returned to the U.S. and spent a year at Harvard, 7 years at Columbia, and then the rest of his career at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I remember when he used to be on grant panels, listening to how many were putting in, and even as much as a decade ago, there'd be 100 new postdocs applying for grants, and 25% of them might have a chance of getting them. My research scientist that I talked with last Friday on campus said there's probably half the number putting in for grants and maybe 5% getting awards, and that this is there will be a lost generation of U.S. scientists.
Just a very quick response, if you'll indulge me. When Jim Watson did the work that identified the structure of DNA that set the basis for modern biology, he was 27. Today, on average, when you get your first NIH grant, if you work in those fields, you're in your early 40s. And there just got to be a lot of people who would be in that field if they thought they could get independent support at the ages when they were most likely to be brilliant and creative. And it's increasingly becoming more and more difficult for young investigators. And it's not because they don't have the talent, it's not because there aren't important problems, and it's not because the problems aren't soluble.